This is the Digital Insurance Podcast. In exciting interviews, we talk to the leading experts about the latest developments, trends and technologies for the digital transformation in the insurance industry.
KI, dynamisches Pricing, Embedded Insurance, nutzungsbasierte Versicherungen. Keylane setzt diese Themen bereits seit Jahren erfolgreich mit seinen Kunden um. Willst du wissen, wie das funktioniert? Folge oder schreibe Keylane bei LinkedIn. Keylane Unlock Tomorrow.
Vertrauen Sie in Ihren guten Ruf? Er ist Ihr Versprechen an Ihre Kunden. Mit Proven Expert bauen Sie online Vertrauen auf, indem Sie authentische Kundenstimmen nutzen und sichtbar werden. Besuchen Sie provenexpert.com/podcast für Ihr exklusives Angebot als Zuhörer des Digital Insurance Podcasts. Proven Expert. Für alle, die wissen, dass Vertrauen mehr wert ist als Gold. Hi, I'm here with Merlin Beyts, Head of Content at ITC DIA Europe, and today we will talk about generative AI. Another episode on generative AI, you might think. Well, yes. However, we are looking at it from a different perspective today. We will talk about if bad actors can use generative AI to attack the consumer or the insurer, we will have a problem. Hi, Merlin.
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
We've all heard of and used generative AI before, but we haven't experienced generative AI in the hands of bad actors yet, have we?
Well, actually, it's already happening now. Certainly, when it comes to sort of the general populace, I mean, I've seen a few examples where this has happened. I mean, just the other day, I was reading a story of a woman who was essentially catfished using generative AI. So she essentially she met this guy on I think it was a dating app or social media, something like that. And she essentially, bought tickets to go and see him. And obviously it wasn't the guy at all. What this sort of fraudster had done is taken this random man's photographs and used deep fakes. So it actually sort of looked to a relatively untrained eye as something that could be realistic. So, and she ended up losing a lot of money out of that. So yeah, it is already happening. And I mean, we're all aware of cold callers who are trying to get money out of us that way. And I think we're aware. I mean, certainly in the UK, a common one is, have you been in an accident recently? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to sort of get your voice. So you say, oh, no, I've not been in an accident. Who's calling? Which company are you calling from? And that's kind of enough for them to go on. But yes, it is already happening. And it's something that insurers have to be aware of very, very acutely for two major reasons. One, or in two different ways. One, they have to be aware of the attacks that can happen on them, because the fraudsters, the con men, the scammers, they're not getting less innovative. They are,
unfortunately.
Well, yeah, exactly. The criminals are they're getting better. So internally they have to be aware of more than just phishing scams. They have to be aware of things like claims fraud. They have to be aware of their employees potentially getting sort of attacked and, giving away sort of, data that they shouldn't be giving away. But they also have to be aware about customers as well. And there's two ways of looking at that. One is, oh no, our customers are going to be attacked, and it's going to be down to the insurance industry to pay out. But there's also another way, which is another way of looking at it, which I think a lot of insurance executives that I speak to look at, a lot of people in insurance and InsurTech in general look at it, which is it's an opportunity to serve the general consumer better. But yes, it's absolutely happening right now. And there's another thing, which is that, I mean, just on the cyber point of view, the technology doesn't actually need to be that sophisticated to be effective. There was a scam going on in India recently over the past year or so that I read about the other week, and people have just had their heads photoshopped onto, let's say, for the sake of this podcast, lurid photos of other people, and that's been enough to sort of scare people into giving away money, and actually much worse as well. So yes, it is already happening, kind of almost as we speak.
That's insane. I mean, you mentioned fraud. Is that something that is popping up more and more in the insurance sphere, that generative AI powered claims fraud is a thing?
I mean, claims fraud's always. I mean, well, saying always going to be a thing is I'm wary of saying the word always and forever too much. It's a Roger Bannister 4 Minute Mile thing.
Mm.
I think that for the foreseeable future, it probably will be. I mean, it's definitely something insurers have to be aware of. There are already people not using generative AI who are making a lot of money out of insurance fraud. I'm not just talking about people who go traveling who say they've lost their iPad when they actually haven't, and there's no way of proving otherwise. I'm talking about people making a lot of money. We're talking millions of pounds. So that's not going to go away. I mean, in terms of, I'm not necessarily seeing a story of generative AI creating or enabling claims fraud. If it had happened, though, I wouldn't be surprised at all, because I think to a lot of, if you're looking at Gen Z and some millennials, a lot of deep fakes, you can kind of tell by the way that the mouth moves, the way that the body is perhaps are not natural, not it's not as natural. Maybe just people that aren't as tech savvy might not see the difference, and it's not. It only takes one person to get it wrong. So I would say it was something that all insurers have to be very, very acutely aware of and start mitigating it now.
So what is it these fraudsters do? Do they pretend to be a customer, or how exactly do they? Obviously, we don't want to give instructions here, but how exactly do they do it?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping the fraudsters aren't watching this, but I mean, at our event earlier this year, in Barcelona, there was a talk given by Mikko Hyppinen from F-Secure, and he showed everyone in the room exactly what you can do as a fraudster, or exactly, let's take it back a step, exactly the capabilities that you have with generative AI. So he showed us two sort of parallel images. One was real and one was a deep fake. The deep fake had a generative AI powered voice, and it looked incredibly real, and it looked, the voice coming out of the person, weird way of phrasing that, but we'll stick with it. The voice sounded like it fitted with that person. It didn't sound like a child's voice coming out of a 90-year-old's mouth. It sounded like it fit the cadence of their voice, fit their bodily movements and their gestures, and it looked exactly like the real one. So if they can do that with a voice tied to a body, then it wouldn't necessarily be too hard for a fraudster to do it just with a voice. Also, I mean, we know that cyber attacks on the rise. That's no secret at all.
Of course.
So, I mean, if one of your customers is involved with a company, their data's accidentally been shared by a completely different company, and they have all this information that they need, where they live, what their date of birth is, all of this stuff, they could easily just call up, use a Gen AI powered voice, use all that information to commit what to an insurer might look like a perfectly legitimate claim. And obviously that's bad for an insurer, because you don't want to be paying out money that isn't owed. You don't want to be doing that. But also it's horrendous for the customer. It's a customer could, in kind of like the motor insurance space, they lose a no claims bonus. Their premiums could go up, all of this stuff through no fault of really the insurer or the insured. And I mean, I'd say that at this point, because in a few years, it's going to be a bit like, you're at a bar at 1 a.m. and you leave your phone on unattended at a table. At this point, we'd all say, well, I mean, and if your phone gets stolen, at this point, we'd probably say, well, don't leave your phone unattended at a table. I think, we're not at that stage yet in terms of, the culpability or the blame lies with us or the insurer, but it will be in a few years, because, not acting on it is just going to let the fraudsters win. So, I mean, if I were a fraudster, that's how I'd start going about it. And maybe not maybe outing myself as someone who thinks that way, but obviously, Alex, I think you know me well enough that that's not the case.
Of course. But I mean, what can insurers do to prepare themselves or guard themselves against this in the future?
Well, so on the one side of things, so I mean, the obvious answer is it's an infrastructure thing, and I don't think insurers, like with many things, are going to be able to totally do it themselves. So working with partners is going to be the answer for a lot of insurers in terms of getting the quick wins and in terms of making sure that the experts are, you kind of letting the experts do their thing. So that's how you create the infrastructure, is by partnering up. Yes, long term you could probably build it in house. I mean, the next thing is also a literacy thing. I think whilst you are in the process as an insurer of, buying some tech or building some tech, whatever it is that's going to protect you and or your customers from these fraudsters, I think the other side of it is, there's a literacy element to it as well. So the way that I would think about it is, when I was at primary school, when I was about, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, every year we had a police officer from the local police station would come to our school, and he would, or she would tell us, here's how you stay safe on a bus if you're traveling on your own, or the tube. If someone comes up to you, and asks for your phone, here's how you deal with that. The answer was always inevitably, give them your phone. It's not worth it. That kind of tactic with just give them the money, it's not worth it, doesn't really work with insurance fraud.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be a literacy thing, and I think that on the one side, it's educating your workforce. If you've got someone who's incredibly young who isn't used to sort of, kind of corporate phishing scams and things like that, then they might be a little bit more at risk. On the other side, if you've got someone in your business who isn't particularly tech savvy, they're also at risk of giving away things that they shouldn't. And also educating the customers. There's ways of doing that. There are marketing channels, there's advertising, online TV, YouTube, social media. There are all these touch points that insurers have to educate consumers on. You need to be, to educate customers and say you need to be aware of these things.
Yeah. Or as you said, somebody, not necessarily a police officer, but somebody coming in like once a year and giving a training session to a specific group of employees.
Yeah. I mean, I would say any and all who have any kind of sort of access to data. It's going to be, your marketing team, your sales team, the partnerships team, whoever it is, going to, I mean, basically anyone with an email, you're probably going to need to educate.
So literally every single employee, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily say you leave out the cleaning staff and the people who work in the cafe and the, like all of those people, you're probably going to need to educate, because as I say at the start, fraudsters aren't going to stop innovating. They're going to keep going, and they'll find any route that they can. So literacy is going to be a big part of it, whilst the infrastructure is being built out and the processes and the sort of internal regulations are being built out, because it has to be in tandem, because otherwise you are just leaving yourself at risk, both in the long and the short term.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, you said infrastructure. The first thing that popped to my mind is setting up new infrastructure that would then authenticate and authorize claims, for example. Doesn't that add an additional barrier to people who want to file legitimate claims on their insurance?
Potentially, and it's the last thing that insurers or customers want, is more barriers to getting their claim paid out. I think it's almost why this podcasts like yours exist and events like mine exist, is because that was a very, that was where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, in terms of the insurance kind of customer journey. No, you don't want to create extra barriers, are there? But maybe there's other things that you can do, keywords, biometrics, something like that. It may even be, and I do hesitate to say this a little bit because it's so nuanced, but maybe it's a data sharing thing as well. If you as a customer are happy to share a little bit more of your data, then perhaps it would be something useful for the insurer to use, and only the insurer. I think that something like a biometric test, a fingerprint scan, something like that is probably something that people would be happy to use.
Difficult subject in Germany.
Well, yeah, exactly. I know it's the home of GDPR, which has affected us all, but obviously provides an incredibly valuable service to, well, again, all of us. But I think there's going to be an extra there. There might have to be an extra layer of data, an extra layer of protection. But again, it's a communication thing, right? If you tell people why this is,
Mm.
at the point of claim, whatever this is, then you are much more likely to have a safe and due process.
So you basically need a sort of a cultural paradigm shift when it comes to sharing data to stop or to prevent criminals from exploiting other data sets to hand in fraudulent claims on your behalf, basically.
I mean, essentially, yes. It might that. I mean, it might not be an extra data sharing thing, but there's. I mean, the stats on this is very clear. The data, ironically, on this is very, very, very clear. In general, people are quite happy to share more data as long as there is a clear value that they get from sharing that data.
Mm-hmm.
I think the frustrating thing that we look at, or that a lot of us, the frustrating thing for kind of organizations in general is that I think the general populace, we all get annoyed when we suddenly get some spam email and you think, oh, it's just because I clicked accept cookies on that one website a year ago. And now I'm getting an advert for whatever, something totally irrelevant. But the data sharing element, if there is a if there is a clear purpose to that data sharing, rather than I just want to look at this website, I think, generally people are much more amenable to sharing that data. So I kind of go back to it again. It's a communication thing. It has to be you are sharing this data for this purpose. This is why we're doing it. It's there to keep you safe. And I think on that explanation, it will probably be seen less as a barrier and
Mm.
more as a safeguarding tool. It's a bit like anything you do to keep yourself safe. It's probably quicker to just imagine you're cooking food. It's probably quicker to just put your hand right in the pan, grab the stuff out and start shoveling it into your face. But we don't do that. It might take longer to, pour it on a plate and stuff. I mean, this is an incredibly glib example.
Yeah.
But it's almost a safeguarding thing that you do so you don't burn yourself. So it's reframing it for the consumer, and you have to communicate that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, if we add in different sort of barriers, like one thing that came to mind was maybe creating a sort of IP address range that you can say, okay, all claims from that IP address are legitimate when it comes to a certain area these people live in, for example. That would also potentially be something that insurers could do. But then on the other hand, obviously, what happens if I drive my car from here to, I don't know, France, and I get into an accident in France and then I submit a claim from France, then obviously that doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's again, we're talking about a lot of different data points. I mean, if it's a car, IP addresses is one way of doing it. What phone you use and the sort of the make and model of that. It's always going to be different. I mean, it's why I would say that biometrics is probably the answer rather than things like IP addresses. Although, I mean, if you live in Frankfurt and you drive to Paris and you submit a claim from Paris, if you have a plane ticket or or if you could prove that you showed your passport at the, each border you drove through, whatever it was.
We don't need to do that. I feel sorry for people from the UK.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, we always had to show the passport. Now we stand in a different queue, which is that's a different podcast and a different series altogether.
But maybe receipts from petrol stations, for example.
Yeah, exactly. There's things to back it up. But if A, there's none of that, and B, you've got a claim that's coming in from Australia, and you never once set foot in the place, then that makes it slightly more obvious. It's I mean, like even Google will, if you get a new phone and you sign into your Gmail, Google will get very, very worried that there's a new device signed in. Is this you? Even though you use the biometrics to confirm it, even though you use the keyword, even though you use the secondary email address and your phone number, it still gets very worried at you. I logged into Spotify on a new device the other day, and that was the whole platform seemed terrified that I had done that. That might be just a cutting down on password sharing thing, but still, I think it sort of illustrates the point that there are things that you can do to essentially mitigate it. And whilst it might be a little bit frustrating at times, it's necessary. And I think people, the general consumer isn't so daft and so kind of frantic that they're not going to sort of understand what it is. Ultimately, I think if you can rephrase it as a safeguarding measure, and it's something that they view as a seatbelt, or something like that, or like security when you're going onto a flight. Talking of travel, none of us look at those bag scanners and we look at security, go, oh, I've got to go through security. But none of us look at security and go, I wish that didn't exist. That's not
fair point.
That's not the way we view things. We don't look at sort of passport control and go, oh, that makes totally no sense. So yeah, I think eventually, maybe it will take a big cyber attack or a lot of people getting scammed for people to understand it and have some kind of, big moment like we've had with sort of, airport security breaches. But ultimately, I think that if it's done with good intentions, and, I think the insurance industry was a sort of a perpetrator of the, we're doing this to save money, which a lot of industries have done. And there's been that mindset shift over the past few years, which is, to safeguard customers and, treat them as partners and take a more consultative approach. There is that shift, obviously. I think that, it's the reframing and making sure that, these policies are being put in place for the customer protection. We can look at it like airport security rather than, oh, this is just another barrier for me getting my claim.
Yeah.
Or worse, I'm sharing too much of my data.
That's true. But I mean, so basically it's also when it comes to tech products, for example, that means insurers need to invest into new tech. But when insurers invest into new tech, obviously fraudsters will invest into new tech as well. And that will lead to a sort of a cat and mouse race kind of thing, won't it?
Yeah, possibly. But that's what it is. That's what it is already, really. It already is cat and mouse. And unless you can eliminate crime or eliminate the potential of anyone committing fraud,
or the necessity for crime.
Yeah, I mean, that's another point. We've got macroeconomic trends which are potentially going to potentially push people into committing sort of more crimes just out of necessity, as you say. So I mean, yes, it could potentially create this cat and mouse situation. But I would argue it's almost what it is already. The thing is, you can be the cat or you can be the mouse, and you want to be there. You want to be there first. You want to be the big predator. You want to be predator rather than prey. You want to be one step ahead of the fraudsters, because especially if this is something that people are doing out of necessity, they're going to be a lot more motivated to do it than you. So it might create this worrying cat and mouse, but people innovate around regulations all the time for good and for bad. So I wouldn't worry too much about that situation. I mean, unless you can create a perfect cybersecurity insurance product and a perfect cybersecurity infrastructure for your own business, it is always going to be a bit like that. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about the cat and mouse situation too much.
Is there anything governments can do?
I just don't think they're going to do anything. Again, bringing up macroeconomic trends. I mean, in the UK, I've got friends who are police officers who say that they can barely prosecute anyone for crimes because they're just so underfunded. And I mean, I'd be maybe looking to governments to create laws and things like that. You can lobby governments to create laws around corporate security protection and things like that. But ultimately, if take the UK, for example, if there's no one who's able to actually, find, prosecute the people who are committing these crimes, then those laws are sort of the deterrent aspect of them only goes so far. And I would say that insurers, any company really, shouldn't really be considering, what the government can do, and should just be worried about what they can do, control what they can control. Because otherwise you'll be waiting for something, you'll be waiting forever. I think there is some positives that I can see, which is that because quite a lot of fraud detection, crime detection, quite a lot of that is automated and powered by technology already. So I do think there is some safeguarding in place. However, it's not something that I would. It's not something that I would I would look to have this sort of governments being this kind of deus ex machina that's going to step in and save the day, whatever kind of governmental body that is.
So it's basically, for the insurers, it's basically the message: you need to act. Nobody's going to do it for you, right?
Essentially, yes.
Well, I mean, that does sound all sort of semi-doom and gloom at the moment. Maybe we can shine a light on the positive aspects that generative AI has as well. Maybe the potential to do good.
Well, here's the thing. It actually, typical insurance nerds we've all been focusing on, well, you and I, we've been focusing on the risks and the downsides and the negatives. There is so much that generative AI can do, just AI in general. Thinking about one element of it, on the bad side, yes, if the bad actors get it, then we're going to be we are all doomed, because there's artificial general intelligence, AGI. If we can discover that and harness that in the right way, that would be the equivalent of discovering fusion. If we harness that positively, I genuinely have no problem saying that if we could harness that in the right way, we could cure cancer, solve world hunger, cure viruses that never go away, things like HIV. We could solve every single global socio-economic or geopolitical conflict there is, which right now is somewhat topical, as as I'm sure all your listeners can imagine. It can have this incredibly wondrous effect on humanity. On the bad side, as I say, if the bad actors get it wrong, or if AGI kind of takes over, we are all in a bit of a doom and gloom state. But there is amazing potential for it, both from a corporate operational efficiency side of things, the help that you can that you can provide as a business to your consumer, but also in the general populace, within healthcare, within defense, all of these, all every industry, every walk of life, it can solve every problem that we had, and we could genuinely be living in this sort of kind of utopia. We might discover the key to helping people live well until they're in their late 200s or something like that. There's a lot of positives, and this is very blue sky thinking. I appreciate this isn't necessarily something that's going to happen. Well, it's not something that's going to happen today.
Well, it might not happen today, but it might happen in the next, 10 years. I actually heard a podcast recently about quantum computing and AI working together and doing things like creating tailor-made medicine for specific people, or for each and every person, to, as you just said, cure cancer, stuff like that.
And yeah, exactly. It's coming, and it'll come quicker than I think a lot of people expect, because what I always talk about is it's tech innovation is exponential. It's not linear. If you think about how long were we using horses to get around, until horses and carts, until someone invented the steam engine. And then people invented things like trams and things like that, and then we had air travel as well. I mean, air travel is, if you consider the history of human transportation, air travel is really, really recent. But then only sort of 50, 60 years after that, you have space travel. I mean,
not even 50, 60 years. I think it was even sooner.
Yeah.
When was
exactly.
the first flight?
Oh God,
the Wright brothers.
The Wright brothers. It was early 20th century.
In 1903. Yeah, right.
1903. So what,
Fine.
66
I'll
years?
give you 50, 60 years then.
Yeah, 50, 60 years is about right. So yeah, I mean, like, it's exponential. Look at the way that we communicate with each other. For a while, it was just people riding on horses,
Mm.
delivering messages. And then, the telegram was invented, and also like and also kind of like phone technology. Then you've got email, and now, and then, personal mobile devices and things like that. And it just happened so quickly. So I do think that, everyone was incredibly shocked, when ChatGPT became a thing,
Mm.
and a thing that everyone can use.
And that
Loads of
everyone
people,
does use. I mean, let's
well,
face it, you can't go into a company today and have an entire company tell you that not one person uses ChatGPT or Bard or something like that.
I mean, it would be worrying, because, I mean, there's actually a statistic I saw the other day that employees who are using, I think it was specifically ChatGPT, but it might have just been, large language models like Bard, etc. But people who are using those technologies, employees who are using those technologies, are doing better than those that don't. So if you
Mm.
don't have a policy of doing that, then change that yesterday. It's there. But I do think, when it all of a sudden happened, loads of people, were all incredibly shocked, but actually we probably shouldn't have been. Because if you look at the history of robotics, 20 years ago, it was, this four-legged creature that kind of couldn't really walk. And now it's jumping over fences and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's righting itself. It's getting back up. It's
Doing backflips.
yeah, doing backflips as well. And, it's walking around rooms and sort of, kind of figuring everything out like that. So it'll be here quicker than we expect. I would say it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be sooner than a decade, but that's something that, again, I'm kind of hesitant to say. It'll be there, and we just need to harness it in the right way. And there's things you can do already to harness generative AI that are actually quite useful anyway. So, do that and leave the tech boffins to figure out the rest.
Mm. Well, I mean, if you compare it to the invention of the internet was invented when? Early 80s, I think.
Around then, yeah.
Yeah. And it basically took until the mid to late 90s to really properly, with the first dot-com bubble that then evolved in the late 90s. So it took about 15, 20 years to properly become engraved in business society. Do you think generative AI will, first of all, do you think that generative AI is a sort of an invention that is on the same pedestal as the internet? And second of all, do you think it will take 15 to 20 years before we can see an actual real impact on the economy and on companies, or will that be a lot sooner?
So I think it's bigger than the internet, in terms of, done right, bigger than the internet, done wrong, also bigger than the internet. Will it take 10 years? I mean, like, even in the, I don't think it will take that long, because I think people are already using generative AI, as I say, we talked about the fraudsters and stuff, but, you can make these great generative AI sort of powered, created posters and songs and things like that. So people are already using it. I mean, it was actually, the writer's strike in the US and the actors' strike, a lot of that has been about the use of AI to create content. Enough of it. It's one of their big stipulations was that, actors don't want to have their faces, have their likeness created by generative AI, their voices created by generative AI, and used for filmmaking without getting any royalties from it. Writers as well, they don't want generative AI created content, without getting any royalties for it, because it puts them out of a job. So yeah, I mean, but in terms of what people can do personally, I think it's already there. I think it will be, because it's exponential, because tech innovation is exponential. I think it will be quicker, because I think a lot of people are using the internet for things like blogs and, chat rooms and things like that. I think people are going to be, because we have a more tech savvy populace on the whole. So people are much more aware as a result of kind of Web 2.0. People are going to be a lot more creative because they know about the things they can do already, and people will discover some new ways of using it as well. I have no doubt about that. But in answer to your question, no, I don't think it'll take 10-15 years. I think it'll be within 5 that it's sort of, properly ingrained everywhere. And will it be as big as the internet? No, I think it'll be bigger whichever way it goes.
Very interesting to see. Yeah. So obviously, generative AI is also going to be a large topic at DIA Munich this year.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly can we expect from like talks or sessions? What can we learn that we haven't already heard, basically?
Yeah, well, so shameless bit of self-promotion. As anyone who's seen one of my webinars, I always manage to shoehorn in there. So ITC Munich, 22nd, 23rd of November. Well, we're going to be we like to cover 2 sides of the sort of, what I call the kind of, the tech content spectrum. So one thing is the very futuristic stuff. So that will be where we talk about, the potential of curing cancer and things like that, and all of that blue sky thinking. The other side of it will be what you can use today and how you can use it. I mean, I find that corporates in general, this isn't just insurance, this is everywhere. Corporates in general are usually a little bit hesitant to start corporate initiatives using things that are free. I mean, ChatGPT and Bard, they're both free. So you can use that. You can, just what you can use that for. But also, I mean, there are examples in the insurance, publicized examples in the insurance space of companies rolling out Gen AI. So, for example, and this is probably the most applicable one right now, AXA earlier this year rolled out generative AI to enable their workforce. That is a smart move.
Cool.
So I think we'll be learning about the low-hanging fruit, but we'll also be learning about the futuristic element, and people much more savvy and much more ingrained within generative AI will be able to elucidate on what that looks like a little bit more. But those are the types of things you'll be hearing in the purely in generative AI. Also, we're covering a lot of the the embedded insurance, the data, the customer experience, and all that good stuff as well.
I look forward to first of all being there, and I look forward to learning some new things about generative AI then as well.
Yeah, well, me too.
So thank you very much for your time and for this discussion and this podcast, Merlin. This has actually been a very, very interesting conversation, and we should definitely do another episode where we can go deeper, where we can dive deeper into specific topics.
Absolutely, Alex. I'll always take an email from you. So absolutely, let's. I'll be back next year, probably shamelessly promoting Amsterdam.
Very good. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Cheers.
That was another episode of the Digital Insurance Podcast. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, and the rest.